So, from a broadcaster perspective, how do you approach covering someone who is as polarizing as a player like Shedeur?
Yeah, I think you just cover them for what they are on the field. I don't think it's any of our listen, every coach, I think evaluating a player as the head coach is very different than evaluating the player as the color commentator during the game, right? How Shedeur Sanders is on a Tuesday meeting or what he that's not a real that's not I don't know. I'm not in the meetings. I think it's very hard for me to pass judgment, and this is not unique to Shedeur, but we want to do this to all young coaches, young quarterbacks. We did it last year to Caleb Williams. How much was he studying film? How much of that was Eberflus and the system? And we have these same conversations about every young quarterback every single year. And I think really the only people that have the insight into being fair in their evaluations are the people in the building, and that's the coaches and the players. But I think to your point, and it's a good one, the idea of having to coach players to like the level of their celebrity, I think that's where coaches have to do a good job and just realizing that none of that matters, right? Even though your fan base is clamoring for a player because he was a famous player in college or because he won certain awards or whatever it was, only you know if that player is ready to play at the NFL level. And sometimes you got to make hard decisions. Sometimes you need to do things that might be against the grain. But at the end of the day, it's up to Kevin Stefanski about whether or not Shedeur Sanders is ready to play or not. And regardless of how good he was in college, regardless of how famous he is or popular, it comes down to whether you can play NFL quarterback. And I thought the other night he looked really good. I thought he looked poised. I thought he looked calm. I thought he looked in complete control. But that was step one. I think we have a very everyone is very quick to swing the pendulum back and forth. He had no place in the NFL, and now he's going to be a Pro Bowler. There's no such thing as nuance anymore. But that's the job of the coach. The media is always going to kind of swing to the extremes, but the coach and the organization has to make sure they stay level-headed. They don't rush that development process. So when he does get on the field, whenever that is, he's in a position for success.
You talk about level-headed and nuance. So I think your perspective is so interesting from a player now in front of the mic. How much, when we talk about things like distractions, because especially with the Cowboys, Parsons, all the money talk going on, if you're in that locker room, how much does any of that actually seep into you and how you do business and what happens for you and your team?
Well, I think we see it every preseason. There's at least one or two examples, and this is not unique. This is not new to Micah Parsons or, James Cook, who's kind of holding in, and then yesterday with Cam Hayward and the hold ins. Like this is not new. This has been going on for 20 years, where people want to get new contracts and they only have a certain amount of ways that they can force their leverage and force their hand. I just don't know many examples where it's ever worked out great. I don't know if there's an example of a guy holding out of all of training camp and then getting to the first game and having a great season, right? You don't ever want to jinx anyone, but it just seems like guys just aren't physically ready. They haven't done the reps. There's been distractions. So for that individual player, it just feels like more often than not. And I'm never going to knock a guy for trying to get paid. Micah's obviously one of the best players in the whole league, offense or defense, but very rarely does it ever work out in their best interest as far as on the field. They might get the contract they want, but are you going to continue to play at that level? Time will tell. But for the teams, it's real. You can fight it all you want, and you can try to block it out all you want. Guys are talking about it. They're being asked about it in the locker room. It's dominating every conversation internally and externally. And the best teams handle their business in advance to prevent these exact distractions. And there's some things in the NFL that you can't prevent. There's going to be fires you have to put out throughout the course of the season. The best teams just don't create their own problems. They don't, you have your best player in the league, get them signed a year ago. Like what is the idea of waiting and letting things drag on? It's just, I don't think it's good business, but I also don't run NFL teams. But I'm going to be very curious to see how a lot of these holdouts, disgruntled players, I think at the end, midway through the season, I think we take a look back and say, how has that individual season started? How has that team started? Because more often than not, there are some side effects to these sort of contractual issues during training camp.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you. Obviously, the distraction in the locker room and the conversation around the team, but how does that impact week one? Okay, Micah Parsons has been out for a majority of training camp. He's quote unquote holding in. He's not getting those practice reps. He's not the only one. Trey Hendrickson, Terry McLaurin, so on and so forth. They're not getting those valuable practice preseason reps. Do we make too much of that, or is that actually something that can come to fruition in a negative way once the season comes around?
For 99% of NFL players, the reps matter. The reps absolutely matter. Training camp matters. It's the only way to get your body built up. It's the only way to build up some sort of, we talk so much about the young kids, like building that physical and emotional and mental edge. It's no different when you're a 25-year-old all pro. Like, there is a process of acclimating yourself to play high level competitive NFL football. Like, you can train all off season, you can do all the lifting and the running, but you have to play the sport to get your body prepared to continue to play the sport. There's really no other way. And for 99% of the guys, those reps are valuable. And for 99% of those guys to the team, they bring such value. Are there the one-offs? Could Micah Parsons go in week one and have 3 sacks? Yes. Could he be the exception to the rule? Sure. He's that special. He is that. But it is much more of the outlier than it is what applies to most NFL players, which is you need to get your time in. You need to build up your callousness of your body, both mentally and physically, for the rigors of an NFL season. And if you want to have success, you've got to get those live reps, whether it's rushing the passer with your other teammates, whether it's a receiver getting on time with your quarterback, whatever that position you play, there is an element of doing it within the confines of your system on the field with 21 other players at the same time alongside of you. And the only way to do that is to be on the field in practice and in the games. You can't recreate that in any other form or fashion. So could Micah get away with it and have a great season? Yes, I wouldn't put anything by him. He's a very special physical player. But I would not try to make a career out of it if I was most NFL players.
All right, real quick before we get you out of here, got to pin you in. Better chance at the playoffs this year. University of Miami, a team you know well, or the Carolina Panthers, a team you know well?
That's a great question. I'm going to go with Miami. I really like what Dave Canales and the direction of the Panthers. The way Bryce finished last year, they've really done a nice job beefing up some of the defensive front stuff. They struggled up front last year. Offensive line's come a long way in the last 2 years. Great job by Dan Morgan in the front office there. He's got tons of weapons on offense. So I think this is going to be a much improved Carolina Panthers team. I just think the job Mario Cristobal and Miami, they're just a little bit further along in this rebuild, so to speak, if you will. So I think last year, obviously Cam Ward made a huge impact. Can Carson Beck be that? Time will tell. But I think this might be a better team. Separate the quarterback. We'll let that determine how that plays out, because it's hard to expect someone to be as good as Cam was last year. But all the other positions, I think the thought both inside that building and outside down in Miami is that this version is a better overall team than last year's. And last year's, they're a meltdown at the end of the season from being in the ACC championship with a potential trip to the playoffs. So I think Miami's closer, but I think Carolina's on their way.